Well, it's time for the Jesse T Show. Good to be back with you. The Brown Beauty is back on duty. Jesse T with you in the place to be, just a little bit after 5 o'clock in Southern California. And it's good to have you around with me from the community to the world. We're on the air and everywhere. Of course, we're on our YouTube channel, Jesse Torrero, and we'll be busting out across our network here as we speak throughout the next few minutes or so. As I talked about earlier this week, we're changing the format a little bit of the Jesse T Show, only because what's taking place is it's right in the middle of the day, and it seems to be that a lot of people are very, very busy through the day, and our research is showing that if we do a little more quick bits rather than a long, solid hour or 2 hours of the Jesse T Show, that it would probably garner and earn more views, more shares, more likes, and more folks pushing it down the road. So we've decided to take a chance here and change the format just a little bit and get back to some of the basics that we used to do when we first started, and that is being way out in the community more than we used to be or have been in the last year. We've been doing a lot of studio work lately, and so we're going to be out in the field here doing the Jesse T Show the way I used to do it about 6 years ago, kind of bring it back to the streets, get a little more real, and have a little more fun out there with the folks that make our community the way it is. Saying hi to Stuart Sloak, who has us on. Hey, Stuart, how you doing? Hey, good to have you along with us here for the ride at facebook.com/Jesse Torrero. And also, we are, of course, on YouTube via channel Jesse Torrero and Instagram Live at Jesse Torrero. So we're going to touch things real quick and fast and efficient here on the Jesse T Show today. And hopefully you'll participate and we can get a lot of views and get a lot of shares and a lot of folks interacting with me here on the air and everywhere. Well, anyway, it is a nice hot one here in Southern California again, and there's tons of accidents all over the freeway. I mean, we had a 7-truck pileup on the 60 freeway. Today, I think they're still cleaning it up. There is so much traffic out there, it's absolutely insane. And I've always said we're living in paradise except for the people. There are just so many people in Los Angeles. And one of the things I wanted to address that seems to be an issue today, and one of the things that I'm noticing more and more is just the lack of courtesy and the lack of manners that people have today. The lack of a happy face, the lack of saying, excuse me, thank you, may I help you, pardon me, just a lack of common courtesy. And I'm seeing it more and more with all people of all ages. And it's disturbing because the young people today are just not learning the message. Their heads are so face down in the technology, they kind of are losing the ability to interact with people, not only their age, but older than them, and also people of different skin color or of different religious makeup or something that may be completely unusual to somebody. They're lacking those basic common things that you and I learned in our generation. For whatever reasons, America seems to be becoming less courteous and less mannered, especially here in Southern California, I've noticed. I'm not saying that there's a lot of good people. There are a lot of good people. But as I go through my day, I'm traveling all over Southern California from one end to the other normally, or I'll be stuck in one area of town that day, and then the next day I'll be someplace else. And what I've noticed is that, hey, saying hi to Lori Whitney, who has us on. Hey, Lori. What I've noticed is that it seems as we have this cultural difference in Southern California. We are just less inclined to talk to people that aren't like us. And when we do, we have less and less to say. And the interesting thing is, and this is something I've been arguing for years and years and years, and what I've always said is this bi society we live in. What I mean by that is everybody has a hyphenated kind of description of themselves. And in that hyphenated description, I think what we've done is we've lost the ability that we are really one people in this nation, and we are really one massive iceberg moving ahead. We've lost that ability to move as one because we believe we're so different and separated from each other. And the reality is we really aren't. It doesn't matter whether you're brown, black, white, green, purple, or blue. It doesn't matter. You all want the same things that I want, and that is to have a decent job and make some money, or be able to make enough money to have a quality of life that you can enjoy and have some happiness in your life. Because if you don't have any money, let me tell you, there is no happiness. Really, there isn't. That's just the reality of it, and that's the way it's always going to be. We want the ability maybe to save a few bucks here or there for our family. We want the ability to be safe and have a nice place to go home to, whether it's an apartment, a condo, a house, a ranch, someplace that we can lay our head at the end of the day and feel like it's a safe place and it's happy and our family is safe. We want the ability to be able to have a family if we so choose, and we want to be the kind of people that we can live in an environment where our family, after they are with us and born, and we're making and growing our family, that they're happy and that they're safe, that they have the ability to have a future. We all want to know that people care about us and that we care about people. We all want to be cared for. We all want to be loved. We all want to be liked. We all want to like people. I think sometimes our dispositions seem to be negative, but that, I think, is an environment that you're living in, that we have a ability in our heart to be positive if given the opportunity. I mean, there was a time where people just seemed to have a general better disposition and spirit among themselves and others than they do today, at least here in Southern California. We are so bombarded with evil and dirty and filthy images and thoughts that it's very difficult to cut through that mess and have a happy-go-lucky spirit. And in reality, human beings are a communal people. We are not people that live by ourselves, off by ourselves, like a hermit in a cave. Oh yeah, you do have folks like that, but we really don't want that. We really like to engage and interact in people. I mean, that's how we have 7.5 billion people on the planet Earth, through engagement and interaction. Human beings really want to have more of a simple life that isn't a life that is so congested, full of irrelevant things. Unfortunately, though, in my lifetime, and I'm 57 years old, in my lifetime, that seems to have changed to some degree. It seems like what we've learned over the last 40 years especially is that we've learned to really look at the bad side of things rather than the bright side of things. Saying hi to Gar Lester, who has us on, and Lori Whitney. Thanks a lot, guys. So, one of the things that I've noticed since the 1980s, early 1980s, is that our society, for the most part, has changed dramatically. And I preface that always by saying here in Southern California, because I think if you get, I know when you get out in the country, other parts of America is a little bit different, but it is changing societal-wise. And more people are feeling like there's going to be a civil war. In fact, what spawned this conversation today and what kind of got it going in my head, I was having a conversation about a business meeting that we're trying to put together. The United States military is looking for a new weapons package for some of its fighting soldiers, and there happens to be a company that has manufactured a series of weapons that the United States military is interested in. And they came to me, through another individual who came to me and said, we need somebody to invest. We've got about $5 million of our own dollars into it, but we're looking for investment capital so that we can go in make the final pitch to the United States military, who wants to demo our series of weapons for possible use on helicopter gunships, etc., etc., etc. And after that conversation, my friend had said to me, he said, you know, society is getting just so much more difficult. And he was talking to a friend of his who was saying he thinks it's kind of apocalyptic in terms of what's going to happen. And where the apocalypse is going to come is in our social engagement of each other. Now, I don't disagree with him too much in that we are becoming a society that has less and less patience and more violence, it seems. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be the Civil War apocalypse, the zombie apocalypse that's going to take us out. He was expressing that there's going to be a civil war here in America. Now, I know there's things that they've engaged on the government level, like Jade Helm 15 and Jade Helm 16, if there was civil disturbance, how they would gather up folks and put them in FEMA concentration camps, etc., etc., etc. But then I just don't think we're going to go into a complete bloodbath streets civil war. I don't see that happening in America, but what I do see happening is a distrust among people just because. And that's a shame. And I believe that technology has created that in us, especially the technology of the last 40 years. That we have 2.5 generations now, the babies being born right now, the 20-something-year-olds who are going to be inheriting the world from the 40 and 50-something-year-olds who are going to be thinking about retirement in about 10 to 12 years. And that is not my generation. I'm the next generation up. I'm the end of the baby boom generation. So we have a whole bunch of people that really don't even know how to say hi and smile. And for that matter, seem to be afraid to say hi and smile. And I tried to ponder as to why, what has happened, and why did it happen this way? And it's really an engaging thought process when you think of where we've come from in 65 years to 70 years in terms of those niceties amongst each other. Posing some questions as to why. You know, people want to blame the government. People want to blame corporations and the insurance companies and the bankers. People want to blame the education system. People want to blame the religious factors and fractions and different religious ideologies. People want to blame all sorts of things. But really, they're just so afraid to blame themselves. The accountability of what has happened to our great nation is really just something that we have done unto us. We are our own worst enemy. Now, I'm talking about the society makeup, the civility. America and the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution created the most civil nation state, the most civil nation in the history of mankind. Because of that civility that we had, and we've nurtured over the decades and centuries, America does more for the world and has done more for the world than any one nation in the history of mankind. We've taken on and have accepted the ability as a whole that we are the protectors of a free earth, an earth that has liberty, an earth that has life and happiness. Especially since after World War II, we've taken on that we will always be there first to help the tsunami victims, the earthquake victims, the volcano victims, even if they aren't Americans. We've taken on that responsibility as a great nation, that to the point that we give more in terms of financial aid and charitable items to people we don't even know more than any other people from any other part of the world or any other nation to this day on the planet Earth. But what has happened to the civility of the individual amongst us? See, everything starts at a beginning and then ends at something down the line. And I really fear that what has started in the last 50 years, for sure, this breakup of our ability to communicate with each other, is causing and will cause, ultimately, a divided America, to the point that we lose our civility as a nation in this crazy, evil world. And I'm not talking about Mother Nature and evil that way. I'm talking about human beings, because of the idea of power and control and greed and the idea of I want it all at the cost of even my own citizens. I really fear that we have a time and place right now where we're at a turning point as a nation. We're at a turning point that we can go down this road or we can go down that road. We can go in this direction and say, you know something? We're just going to keep doing what we do. And maybe 25 to 100 years from now, we will be a nation that will be broke up into certain parts. Or we can go down this road. And maybe 25 to 75, 100 years from now, we'll be a stronger nation. One of the things that our founding fathers understood is that they came from someplace else. They didn't spawn from the mud, if you believe in evolution. They didn't spawn from the mud or the creator in this hemisphere, if you're a creationist. We all came from somewhere else. Even the indigenous people, the native people, came from someplace else into this hemisphere. They didn't come from the mud of this hemisphere. They all came from somewhere else. And the founding fathers understood that since we did all come from somewhere else, they had the chance to create something new. And that's why we speak English. We were one vote away from speaking German. Yeah, not French, but German. One vote for our common language. This is why we are a Judeo-Christian nation, a Judeo-Christian concept. This is why through the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and our founding papers, we adhere to a Judeo-Christian ideology, not Islamic, but Judeo-Christian, not Buddhist, but Judeo-Christian, not Hindi, but Judeo-Christian. This is why America has been a country that others have wanted to come to, because it is a place for them to start over, to start anew, to become part of something that everybody else had to become part of. I think we've lost that concept in our society, that we are all from someplace else, but more importantly, we've lost the pride that we are now here in America. We've lost the ability to feel proud of the sacrifices that our lineage, our forefathers, individuals have taken and the choices that they've made to come to this nation and start something for their legacy and their lineage and their families for time immortal and to forever and ever and ever. We've lost that understanding. And it's a shame, because it's been trickling and trickling and trickling for many decades. So when you look at the reasons why, you have to ask yourself, well, it wasn't the rhinoceroses or the elephants, or it wasn't the redwood trees that caused these reasons why to happen. It's called human beings, you and me. And for decades I've said, We need to get back to the basics of what's made our nation great, thus get back to the basics of what's made our families great, thus get back to the basics of what's made us great. We need to be accountable for what we say and what we do. We need to be accountable for the actions that take place. We need to be accountable for representing ourselves in a positive light and always striving to be right, to change wrong to right, to stand up and put your shoulders back, and to be an honorable, ethical, moral person. That has to take precedence. Not, well, if I don't get caught, I'm not breaking the law. Those kind of statements don't work anymore. Oh, they might be funny, and they may have some humor, but that is what adds to the destruction of our society as a whole. We need to get back to some basics, and that is communication and the skills that we used to have. Before all this technology took place, I was talking to my 86-year-old father, and he says the biggest problem is all this technology. This is the problem, that it's easy for people to shove technology in your face and be done with it. I remember before technology, families would talk to each other. Well, they might fight, they might argue, they might create a lot of noise, but they would learn to talk. I remember that parents used to talk to their kids and kids used to talk to their parents. I remember that before all this technology, that grandparents were part of our family structure. I remember that wisdom that was handed down from grandparents to parents to children being born was a wisdom that made you who you are, that gave you substance to carry your family name, that identified you as somebody special and somebody unique within your family, and built a pride. And in that pride, built a pride for your home, your neighborhood, your community, your city, your county, your state, and your national and federal government, your country. I remember when you weren't given a toy to play with in the car on family trips. I remember when you would listen to parents and older people because they lived here longer and you were taught those respectful things at home. Or you got your butt whooped or your head smacked. See, we've taken away from the raising of our youngsters, we've taken away the ability of families by putting technology and making it easy. My children are grown. My children are on their way into their lives. Very successful young people in their 20-somethings and very successful in their lives. My children are past that point where I have to worry and engage about those things. Saying hi to Arian McClang and Izzy Camille and Janine Ambrose and Max Millions. Hey, thanks a lot, guys, for checking in. Appreciate that. And James Quinn and Gar Lester. We're talking about some of the reasons why. Why are we so uncivil to each other today? What's gone wrong over the decades? What has happened? And we're talking about right now is that the systems to be allow us to disregard communicating with each other. As I said, my father, who's 86, says technology has destroyed everything about humanity. I don't disagree with him at all. Technology is good, but technology is only good to those who use it right. To those who use it wrong, technology is bad. And one of the devices that we do with this smartphones is we don't use it properly, in my opinion. What we do is we use it as a tool to not be accountable for ourselves. And we have to get back to being accountable. There are some basic qualities of being a human being, I believe. And some of those basic qualities are, who do you think you are in place in this world? Now, let me say that again. Who do you think you are in place in this world? What do you think you are in your place in this world? I'll give you an example. We all know the monarchy of England. And we all know that the prince just got married. Prince William, correct? And we all know who Prince Charles and Prince Henry is. No, it's Prince Henry he just got married. I get those two mixed up. Nevertheless, we all know the monarchy of England. When you are born as a queen or king to be in England, in the aristocratic family of the monarchy in England, when you are born, you learn from the time you are in the womb, you learn how to be king someday. Think about that for a second. You learn how to be king someday. You learn how to sit. You learn how to think. You learn how to breathe. You learn how to wear the proper clothes. You learn how to move your hands. You learn how to eat. You learn how to talk. You learn how to move as you walk. You learn how to play sports a certain way. You learn how to become king or queen someday. You know your place in the world from the moment you are born. You are taught from the outside in what's expected of you, what's not expected of you, what you should say, what you shouldn't say, how you should say things, how you shouldn't say things. You learn about money and power and history of your family's lineage, going as far back as they can go. You learn everything about who to become, who you are going to become. So when that happens, it's natural. Why, of course? Why, of course? That is a perfect example of somebody who knows their place. And why is that? Because your parents and the people around you and the world that you were born into has provided you with a roadmap. A roadmap of how you're supposed to be. They are accountable for you. Thus, you are accountable for them. Thus, you are accountable for yourself. I remember when my children were born, and one of the things that I did was I said, you are Toreros. And that means something in the world. You must represent yourself a certain way. We taught them the lineage. I taught them where they came from, as far back as 1527. I taught them who they are, what's expected of them, right from the beginning. We taught them where they're going to be at different stages in their life and what is expected of them in the future. We gave them a roadmap to be accountable for, so that they could be accountable for the things they say and do and how they communicate with you and themselves and their family. They didn't learn how to play with fancy toys. They didn't learn that they could have a computer in each bedroom, that they could have the newest fandangle instrument cell phone. They didn't learn that if they could have this and they could have that, and yet they had everything that they wanted and everything that the technology of the day while they were growing up provided them. But what they also had is they had communication. And they learned how to speak and think and talk and walk. This is one of the things we've forgotten how to do with our young people. We cast them off into the side, and as long as they are quiet and shut up and don't cause too much grief, then things must be going okay. There's nothing more that bothers me than those car commercials today, where they have the drop-down video screens, or the screens in the back of the front seat and back in the side seat, the front seats, where immediately the kid has a smartphone in his hand. We know that the world moves on the smartphone. Everything is going that way, and you know that too. But let me ask you this. What if they don't have a smartphone? What happens? Can they communicate? Can they use their mind in an abstract way? Can they think through a solution? What if they don't have Wikipedia at their fingertips? Would they know how to describe something? Would they know how to spell something? What if they didn't have spell check and punctuation and grammar checking devices? What if they didn't have the simple solutions that they take for granted? What if that stopped? What would they do? What would they become? Could they communicate their ideas? Could they communicate to other people that even speak their same language? Think about that. I postulate that part of the violence we see is because people under the age of 50 cannot communicate with each other anymore. They don't know how to communicate anymore with each other. So if you don't know how to communicate with words, the only thing you have left is with violence and yelling and screaming and blaming. Technology, like my father says, has destroyed a lot of things. A lot of things between that relationship. People just don't know how they're supposed to be anymore. What's expected of them. Where they came from. Where they're going. What they should be doing today. To honor the past and get to the future. They don't know this anymore. Another reason why I think that people are having such a hard time being civil amongst each other is because of the rise of racism, the rise of prejudice, the rise of discrimination, the rise of hatred, the rise of all of this. And I tell you this because, look it, I remember as clear as yesterday that it wasn't like this 35 to 40 years ago. Things were actually getting better, and it seemed like things were getting better. People were actually striving. Do you know that people of 100 years ago were completely separated from each other just because of the pigment of their skin? Well, this has not something new in human quality and human nature. People have always been separated. Racism, prejudice, bigotry, hatred has always been there amongst human beings for time, forever. When they're different than you, or what you perceive to be normal, then that kicks in. It's built into us as human beings. But the United States of America has created the most civil society for civility amongst people who are different. Because that's what this nation was built on. With people like Bobby Kennedy, JFK, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and the so many others before them, and the so many others after them. The nation was changed for the better, for the good of all people. The civil rights of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, that movement moved America to the point that we had a president who was black, an African American who was black. That civil rights movement has moved America to the degree that we have astronauts and engineers and teachers and construction workers and multi-billion-dollar businessmen and women and people that work in politics, senators and congressmen, and the president, and pastors, and policemen, and firemen, and welders, and janitors, and gardeners, and tree cutters, and people who have tire companies, gas stations, pharmacies, people who are engineers, who are philosophers, people who are quantum physicists, who are not white. What a concept. Nowhere on the planet Earth has civil rights ever provided its people with the ability that America has provided all of its people, and has fixed the past so that we can move more eloquently and smoothly through the present day to the future, and was continuing to fix the future. A level playing field. There was a great poet who said, a poet of the sea, he said, "Give me a sail on the tall ship and a wind, and I'll take you to the ends of the earth." A level playing field. Exactly what President Trump is doing with the tariffs. Just give us a level playing field. Pay your bills, EU. Pay your bills, world. Give us a level playing field. Don't worry. We will be out in front of you. We will have the biggest shield. We will have the biggest sword. And we won't let you fall. But pay your bills. Sort of like a tenant. Don't worry. I'll provide a nice place for you to live. I'll fix the heater and the air conditioner and the stove. I'll fix the doorknob and the cabinet. Just pay your rent on time and live by the rules. Simple concepts. We have become the most civil conscious nation mankind has ever seen. Civil rights is something that was created in America. Think about that. There was no civil rights in Rome. There was no civil rights in Germany. There was no civil rights in China and Russia. There was no civil rights in India. There was no civil rights in England, Iceland, Finland, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Libya, Egypt. There was no civil rights in Australia, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Jakarta, Japan, Korea. There was no civil rights in Poland. There was no civil rights in Somalia. There's no civil rights anywhere until America created it. You see, one of the things that we've lost in this country, and this is the second issue, is we've lost the understanding that we as a people move as a people of power and strength. And why is that? Why is that? Why do you think, Dominic, who's watching now? Why do you think, Becky, who's watching now with us? Why do you think, Mohammed? Why do you think, Frank and Maximilians? Why do you think we've lost our way and our ability to understand that America is the creator of leveling the playing field for everybody? See, we've gone backwards. And that's what I've said. The hatred, the bigotry, the racism, the prejudice, the discrimination has gone backwards in my lifetime. And what I see today is vile. Why do people who consider themselves Caucasian, why are they afraid of people who consider themselves black? Why? Why do people who consider themselves Hispanic afraid of people who consider themselves Asian? Why? Why? Where did that come from? Oh, as I've explained, there's a bit of that in all of us, and there will always be that. There will always be that. It's human nature. It's built into our DNA and our genes. And I'm not talking about Levi's. But why is that? Why is it being postulated, propagated? Why is it being targeted? Why is it being focused on? Why is it being surgically removed, exploded, blown up all of a sudden in the last 35 to 45 years? Why? Have you ever thought about that? We see what's happening. And why is that the only thing that we see? Well, in newspapers, in journalism, when there used to be journalism, there is no journalism anymore. In newspapers, the thing that captures you, the eye of the reader, is the headline. So, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. There you go. And violence. And death and destruction. Always sell more papers than people who are doing well. I have a theory about that. It's because human beings don't want to see people doing better than themselves. Because no matter what stage they are at in their lives, to see other people that are doing better than them is depressing. Especially when everybody seems to be doing better than you, the individual. It's depressing. I mean, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy. You see, we like to be able to sit back and say, wow, look at those people. They sure are a lot more worse off than we are. That's what captures you to slow down to see somebody on a motorcycle accident on the freeway. That's what captures your blood thirst. Sort of like the Klingons. We all have some Klingon in us. And unfortunately, they found that they can make a lot of money. And who is the infamous they? The ones that you pay and they give you something. This is what they found. So, in order to control people on a mass level, because there are a lot more people that you've heard me say are the eons and eons of peons, like you and me, than there are the aristocrats and the monarchs and the ones at the very top of the pyramid. The globalists, we call them today, the elitists. This is what Donald Trump is fighting. He's breaking the norm. He's breaking those shells. He's breaking those barriers wide open, and they don't like him. And who are they? Everybody you see puts him down. That has some sort of power or control over you. They don't like him because he's breaking their little good old boys and girls club that they've had since the end of World War II. And longer, for that matter, really. Why do you think Abraham Lincoln was killed? So the world could be taken over by a selected few. And they've done it. And we're at the precipice of them doing it so well, now they're pitting us against each other. Because you see, the Catholic Church and the Dark Pope and the Vatican and the Jesuits used to control the world through guilt. Except we're a Protestant nation. We were built on the Protestant Reformation of Martin Luther. That's another topic to talk about. That's a whole nother topic. We slipped in there when one pope cast out the Jesuits and the Dark Pope and the Jesuit order, the evil order of the Vatican, which has now been in power for a long time because the next pope allowed them to come back in. But America slipped in that 100 years or so. You see, the way you control people is you break them up at the house first. You destroy their family's communication. You destroy the stories over the campfires that were told down about great-great-great-great-grandpa and great-great-great-grandma. You destroy the pride of their name. Do you think the English monarchy destroys the pride of their name to their children who are born? You destroy or don't allow it to be taught or don't even allow it to get started. You break it up at home first. When the little ones don't learn at home, they will never learn it in the world. It'll be decades and decades and decades before they learn anything about themselves. How can you become somebody if you don't know where you came from? How can you become somebody great and have a successful future in anything you desire if you don't know how to be from day to day because you don't know where you came from? You've heard the concept, history repeats itself. Well, if you learn good history or some history about your family and it's taught to you in the family home of America, then you're going to have the ability to have the greatest success. And if dad stays at home and the family's not broke up, you have even a greater success ability for your future as a person, whether you're a boy or a girl, it doesn't matter. The breakup of the American family over my lifetime, the destruction of marriage, the destruction of communication, the creation of divorce as a way in which to have a happy life. Sorry, hey, too bad, work it out. We've made it too easy. 60% of the families, 70% of the families in America now divorce in 2 years. Within 5 to 7 years, something like 45 to 50% divorce. After 7 years, it goes down to like 30%, 10 to 12 years. Sorry. Moms, you can't raise boys to be men. It's that simple. Because you don't have a penis. It's just that simple. You don't have testosterone. And dads, you can't raise a little girl to be a woman without some woman helping you raise that little girl, whether it's your mom, whether it's your grandma, whether it's your sister, whether it's someone that you trust, because let's face it, you don't have a vagina. It's that simple. So first you break up the family like we talked about before. You destroy the communication. Now they're destroying it better than they ever did before with the technology. Oh my goodness. Why do you think we have a bunch of young people who are out of shape, who can't do 3 pull-ups, at 15 years old, who can't run a mile without upchucking? Why do you think the United States military has to get people in shape before they can even start boot camp? They got to put them in pre-boot camp. Because we broke up that communication at home. Then what you do is you break up something very powerful. And that is, you break up the personal responsibility of individuality. And you create something that is not true. That's fabricated. Saying hi to Jason Charles. Thanks a lot for having us on the Jesse T Show. Also saying hi to Michelle VCFS. Thanks a lot for checking in. We're talking about why our societies become so uncivil towards each other. So once you break up the home, you break up the ability for people to engage in communication. You can then control them and create hatred through discrimination, prejudice, bias, and racism, and fanaticism. Because if they can't speak to each other, they can't communicate. When two minds can't get together, you've got them beat. One of the basic commands of successful military engagement is to destroy, command, and control. Communication. Divide and conquer. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, 5,000-year-old war treatise. Divide and conquer. That's what they're doing now. They're dividing you, dividing us. Because you see, there was a time, my friends, in my lifetime, where things were actually getting better. Oh, they were prodding along maybe at a turtle's pace, but in America, the country that created civil rights, the country in our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution says that all are created equal, that our Creator has given us inalienable rights of life, liberty, and happiness. Yes, it's taken a while to get there, but we've gotten there. All those other nations haven't even gotten there. But why do they want to do this? Well, my belief is really simple. Over the last 70 years since the end of World War II, they needed us. They needed the American workers' know-how, his education, his brute strength, her brawn, her ability to work as a team. All that was taught in World War II. They needed educated people. And they paid them really well for it, better than ever before. They doubled people's income after World War II. Allowed them to have a house. They created the American dream. You know, a white picket fence, a yellow house, an apple pie, a flag out front, and a Chevy in the driveway. 5-day work week, vacations, and a new car. Where mom took care of the kids and dad worked hard. They created that ideology, that American dream. But somehow along the way, we allowed the corporations to take control of our government. And you know who warned us about this? President Eisenhower, on his parting speech in the White House, like all presidents do. He said, beware of the military-industrial complex. He warned us about this. In 1959, he warned us about this because he understood it. See, Eisenhower was a Republican. FDR was a Democrat who really wanted to be King Roosevelt, but he died going into his fourth term. We would have voted him king forever. Even though he was a progressive like no other. But that's a whole nother discussion, because none of his progressive ideologies were working prior to getting us in the war. The only way he could get us on his side is to get us in the war and kick ass on the world because we could, because we weren't being bombed every day because we had two giant oceans between us. But here's the point. Eisenhower warned us. But it was LBJ who allowed that to take place after the assassination and murder of JFK, where the corporations became the owners, the slave owners, and you and I and all politicians became corrupt. We didn't see it as citizens, but it started at that level. How do you become a politician, make some money, and then walk out a multi, almost billionaire today? You know, when President Truman, the president right after FDR, when he passed away and President Truman became president, when he left Washington, he went back to Missouri and he went back to his business and he was broke. Broke. He had to start his business all over again. And that's why, that's when Congress voted to have presidents and themselves, representatives and senators, a salary for the rest of their lives if they served. Because of President Truman. He was broke. So when you understand history, Steve-O, what's happening, brother? When you understand history, Charles Young, Joaquin Rodriguez, you understand why we are today. Well, we have been usurped as a nation. They don't need us anymore. I said this 35, I said this in the 1980s. Told my mother, who's no longer with us. She died of Lou Gehrig's disease. At 57 years old, my age right now. I told her, we had a conversation in 87. They don't need us anymore. Not because of technology, but because they took the corporations and went overseas. Because they could get child labor in Malaysia, in Mexico, in China. Yeah. They could get labor for nothing. Because those people didn't have anything. So when you go from nothing to making $25 a week, that's like, man, you are living in heaven's gate. And we allowed that as a country to happen because of the corrupt governments we created. We created the tariff ideology. America created it. Do you understand that? We created modern tariffs. Before that, it was always here because there's never been free trade. But we specialized in it. Why? We allowed our companies to go overseas. And then send us back the goods that we bought out of the country that were made somewhere else. And they made more money because the labor was less. And they didn't have any tariffs coming back. Hardly any. Free money, baby. Corrupt politicians. And here comes President Trump. Even President Reagan, who started NAFTA, got it all wrong. Clinton signed it. Bush won, tried to get it through, but he got dragged into his problems. Clinton signed it. NAFTA, the first one. Oh, horrible. See, they needed us. But in my lifetimes, they found out they didn't need us anymore. And they're not going to need you coming here very soon, my friends. 25 to 30% unemployment is going to hit the world globally in the next 5 to 10 years because of AI, automation, robotics, artificial intelligence. You better retool yourself and learn to do something else because 25 to 30% of all the jobs on God's blue-green earth are going to disappear. They don't need us anymore. See, that's a problem. The problem is, when they don't need us anymore, we still need them. We're like an addict. And when we don't got it, we get angry. And since we don't know how to communicate, we can't vote these bastards out. So what they do is they take our own fear and they turn it against ourselves and against others within our own communities that don't look like us, don't act like us. It's called a distraction, the great distraction. In chaos, anarchy, and mayhem, there's great control. There's great organization. That's what the Catholic Church was all about. That's what Martin Luther argued against. That you don't have to pay your way to God by an indulgence. That the way to God is by faith. They eventually poisoned him after the 1550s. You see. So what do? With the media that you own, the greatest device of communication, and you stop people from communicating, along the way you teach them, hey, they don't have to read anymore. They can have audiobooks. And along the way, there's no communication in the family, in the home, so there's no communication outside the home. You enslave people with great debt. You enslave them so they work. They don't get to know their neighbors. They don't know their kids. They don't know their school. And now what you have is you have a bunch of people that are living in fear. And it's easy to foster fear with a strike of a match. And over the last 35 to 40 years, what we're seeing now is we're seeing that fear fostered in the strike of a brilliant match. And why not? Let's start with the African Americans. Let's start with black people. They only make, what, 8% of California, 8% of Los Angeles' demographic? Let's kill them. Let's get them all in. Let's get the CIA to get crack into their society in the 1980s. Why not? Let's create prostitution. Let's break up the black family. Let's destroy it. You know, after the Civil War, the black family was strong and powerful. They moved all north where the jobs were. And they had income. And they had education. They bought houses. They had banks. They had societies. Just like all Americans. They integrated. Oh, but they destroyed that in the 1950s. With the Great Society. Because, hey, it's just a bunch of black people being killed. Who cares about them? What do you think they've done in Africa? Why is Africa not a great continent? No one cares about Africa. Nobody. Oh, then who do we go after then? Let's go after the poor, stupid white people. Because they're uneducated too. And then let's let a bunch of illegal aliens come in here and we can control them. And they'll be progressives. Because they think they're coming into a democratic society and they think the Democrat National Party is democracy. They don't know any better. They think those two will run hand in hand, but they don't know. Open your eyes. Destroy America from within. Control America from within. Because they don't need you anymore. And Donald Trump is trying to change that. He's saying America is great. And we do need our citizens. And I'm going to do it my way. Because I know it works. Because it's worked for me my whole life. And I've been up and down and up and down and up and down. And you by the time pay your bills. But the powers don't want that. So they make us hate each other. Blacks killing whites, whites killing blacks, brown killing blacks, blacks killing browns, whites killing browns, browns killing Asians, Asians killing blacks, blacks killing Asians, Asians killing browns, browns killing whites, whites killing Asians. They just hate us, make us hate each other. Give us a lot of drugs, opiates, opiates, opiates. All of a sudden, opiates, opiates, opiates. All of a sudden, opiates. Well, it was crack, it was meth, it was cocaine. Now it's opiates, opiates, opiates. It was heroin, opiates, which is an opiate derivative, opiates, 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 right? Debt, 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 right? Stress, 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 right? Fanatical religious orders, fanatical religious orders, fanaticism, 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 right? Obesity, 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 high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, strokes, heart attacks, right? Poor drinking water, poor food, right? Why? 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 Here's why. You might call it really way out in left field, but I'm going to tell you why. I bet you I'm closer to the truth than far away. So goes America, so goes the world. And this is what Donald Trump is trying to make you understand and the rest of the world, is that under his timeline, America is going to be the America that it should be. Period. That what made us great as a nation, we're getting back to. Why fix a wheel that ain't broke? Well, our wheels are broke, and he's fixing them. At least he's trying. You know? Because if it doesn't get fixed, we will become like the rest of the world. The world your fathers and mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers came from to America, the shining city on the hill that Reagan talked about. The world, your lineage, did everything they could do, cross the deserts, cross the waters, cross the jungles, came here, came to this great country with the idea of starting something new for their offspring, for their lineage, for their future, for their families, because America is the only place on the planet Earth that you can have that you can come here with nothing and you become great if you want it to be. They came, your forefathers came here, whether they came here last year, whether they came here 50 years ago, whether they came here 273 years ago. They came here, they blazed a trail for you, and if we don't have that, if we don't have that in this country, then what do we have? Exactly what your people came from. That's the outlook. This is why we have we have a society that's become very low on civility. This is why. It's a controlling device to control you and everybody. It's a distraction. And the fake news media is the best at it. And the toys of technology are the best at it. You want to be successful? Get back to the basics. The basics. Simple. But if you don't know what the basics are, where do you know where to go? If the monarchy who bore a new child doesn't know how to be the monarchy of England, doesn't have a history of how to act from the time the baby is in the womb, from cradle to grave, then what happens to the monarchy of England? It falls apart. Better get back to the basics. It's that simple. Or you're destined to get exactly what they want. Boom! The world according to Torrero. Now you're straight on the point. The Jesse T Show went a little longer than what I wanted to do, but that's the difference in the show. It might go long, it might go short. It may be fast, it may be a little bit longer. But that's what it's all about. Good to have you guys along with me. It'll be posted up on YouTube as we go live there, and Instagram, and all of our other 20 network sites. Good to have you along with me, Jesse T. Have a great one. We'll see you tomorrow. We're going to be in studio tomorrow. I got the double D's coming in. That's right. The two big dogs coming in. I got Dell and Dominic. We're going to be talking about the days of our topics and issues and having a lot of fun. We want you to chime in at facebook.com/Jesse Torrero, and also at 424-227-9461. We'll be in studio live, and we'll be doing point counterpoint as we hunt and dig for the real story. Forget about those with the alphabet soup, the mouthpieces of the world. We want to know what real folks who work every day think. The real story. Dell and Dominic in tomorrow. Oh man, the fire was burning last week, and it's going to burn this week. You've got to check it out. Have a great day. The Jesse T Show. The Brown Beauty is off duty. See ya.